Hey, Vintage Car Chronicles listeners. Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be exploring the history of BMW.
It's quite a story.
It is.
We've got articles, snippets of their history, even some interesting little peeks behind the scenes.
Yeah, and you might be surprised to learn that they didn't actually start out making cars.
No, they did not.
They started in 1916, but not on the Autobahn.
No, in the air.
In the air.
Making aircraft engines.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild thought, right? Like powering biplanes to, these really sleek sports cars.
Yeah.
It's quite a journey.
It really is.
And their BMW i3 engine was a big deal in World War I, wasn't it?
It was a very successful engine.
Yeah.
Very fuel efficient for the time.
Oh, wow.
So the German military really loved that.
Yeah.
And it could handle high altitudes, which was pretty groundbreaking back then.
So this early success that they had really helped them to grow, right?
Absolutely. They even built a brand new factory just to try and keep up with demand. But then the Treaty of Versailles after the war, that kind of threw a wrench in things.
Yeah, it must have been a huge blow to them.
It was. Suddenly they were forbidden from making aircraft engines.
Wow, so how did they adapt?
Well, they had to get creative to survive.
Yeah.
They started making all kinds of things.
Yeah?
Farm equipment, household goods, even brakes for trains.
Really?
It was a period of real diversification for them.
Huh, interesting.
It was.
It's interesting, though, that even during this time, like after World War I, they were already involved with motorcycles, weren't they?
Yeah, they were supplying engines to a company called Helios.
Oh, yeah.
For their motorcycles.
Interesting.
And so there was a 1920 Helios motorcycle that had a BMW engine in it.
Wow.
That company actually later merged with BMW.
Wow.
So you could say those early partnerships kind of foreshadowed their motorcycle future.
Kind of a full circle moment there.
Yeah.
Then in 1922, they bought a company called Bayerisch Flugzeugwerke. And I think this is kind of an interesting detail for listeners.
It is.
Their factory, which was located on Lurchauer Strasse,
Right.
is still BMW's headquarters today.
Yeah, that same spot over a century later.
That's wild.
Wow.
But even after this acquisition, they still didn't immediately jump back into aircraft engines, right?
No, they kept making engines, but they shifted their focus.
Yeah.
Things like buses and trucks.
Right.
But 1923, that was a pivotal year.
Okay.
Because they unveiled the BMW R32, their first motorcycle.
And this is, I think, where it gets really interesting for our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners.
Absolutely.
The R32 is like such an iconic design.
Oh, it's legendary.
Yeah.
Designed by Max Friz.
Yeah.
It had the flat twin Barkser engine.
Yes.
Which, you still see in the motorcycles today.
I love the way those engines look. The
Ah.
cylinders sticking out on each side, just so distinctive.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the looks, was it?
No, function was key
Yes,
as
yeah.
well. The R32 also had an integrated gearbox. Okay.
And a shaft drive,
Mm.
which was easier to maintain than
Yeah, sure.
chains or belts, which were more common at the time.
So even in their very early days, they were focused on innovation, on being different,
Absolutely always pushing boundaries.
which led them to the next big step, the car market.
Yeah. In 1928, they acquired a company called Fahrzeugfabrik Eisenach,
Okay.
and they were already making a little car called the Dixie 315.
Okay, so instead of starting completely from scratch, they
Yeah. Big peasant.
strategically acquired
skirt.
a company
Yeah.
and their product
Exact
that
same.
was already out there. Yep.
They rebadged the Dixie 315, and they were off to the races.
Wow. It's kind of crazy to think that such a humble little car was the starting point to
Yeah,
this
yeah.
huge global giant.
Humble beginnings.
They are today.
Yeah.
But then the 1930s brought a lot of changes, didn't they? For the world and for BMW.
Yeah, the world was changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that meant Germany gearing up for war again. And this meant that BMW had to shift their focus back to aircraft engines.
Yes. Sadly, during World War II,
Yeah.
they ended up producing over 30,000 aircraft engines for the Luftwaffe.
And of course, this also meant their factories were heavily damaged from the bombing.
Oh, yeah. And after the war, they were even prohibited from making vehicles for a while.
Wow.
It was a difficult time.
It's hard to imagine BMW, the maker of, all these high-performance machines,
Right.
reduced to making pots and pans just to stay afloat.
It was a testament to their resilience.
Yeah,
They
clear.
even made bicycles for a time,
Huh.
much like they did after the First World War.
So when did they get back to motorcycles and cars?
Well, motorcycle production restarted in '48,
Okay.
but they didn't get back into the car market until 1952 with the BMW 501.
And the 501, wasn't that a luxury sedan?
It was.
It seems like a bold move.
It was a strategic decision.
Okay.
Limited production, focus on luxury cars for higher profit.
Okay.
Plus, it aligned with their image before the war. But they knew they needed a more affordable car if they really wanted to get going again.
And that's where the Isetta comes in.
The adorable little bubble car.
Oh, I love the Isetta.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
In 1955, they got a license to make it.
Yeah.
And it was an instant success.
Wow.
Over 10,000 sold in the first year alone.
Wow.
They ended up selling over 160,000 of them.
That's amazing.
It was a lifeline.
It was.
It kept them going during those tough years.
But they still needed something a little more practical, like for families.
Right. So they tried adapting the Isetta platform.
Okay.
Created the BMW 600, bigger engine, more seats.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite the hit they hoped for.
Yeah.
And by 1959, things were looking pretty grim.
Oh, no.
Motorcycle sales were down. The luxury cars weren't selling well enough.
Oh.
Debt was piling up. Bankruptcy was looming.
It sounds like they were at a really critical point, facing a very uncertain future.
It was make or break time. And what happened next could have changed the entire automotive landscape as we know it. BMW was on the verge of being absorbed by Daimler-Benz.
Daimler-Benz, the company behind Mercedes-Benz.
That's right. They almost became one giant company.
Wow, it's hard to imagine those two iconic brands as one.
It really is. The automotive world would look very different today.
It would, yeah. No 3 Series, no M5.
Exactly. The whole concept of the ultimate driving machine might never have existed.
It's wild how close they came to just disappearing.
It really is.
So how do they manage to escape that fate?
It was a real fight. A lot of people weren't happy about this potential merger.
Yeah.
The dealers, the small shareholders, even the workers themselves, they all pushed back.
It sounds like they really believed in BMW.
They did. They saw something special, something worth saving.
Yeah, and thankfully their voices were heard.
They were. A counterproposal emerged.
Okay.
Focused on restructuring BMW as an independent company.
Okay.
And it gained enough support to actually block the Daimler-Benz takeover.
Wow, so they fought off this giant, but they were still in a very vulnerable position.
Oh, yeah, they were still struggling.
And that's where the Quant family stepped in.
That's right, Herbert and Harold Quant.
Yeah.
They were already major shareholders, but they significantly increased their investment.
Wow, so that was really a lifeline for BMW.
It was. It gave them the breathing room to restructure and figure out their next move.
Without the Quant family, BMW as we know it might not exist today.
That's very true. Their support was absolutely crucial.
It's interesting, though, the Quant family's wealth, it had links to the Nazi regime.
Right.
Which is,
a very controversial aspect to BMW's history.
It is, yeah.
But their investment certainly played a role.
It did.
In BMW's survival.
Okay, so they had the backing of the Quant family. They needed a winning product.
Right, and they found it.
And that's the BMW 700.
The 700, yeah, that little car with the motorcycle-inspired engine.
It's kind of cool. They took something they already knew how to do well and applied it to cars.
That's right, and it worked.
It did work.
It was stylish. It was affordable.
Yeah.
Offered in a few different styles, including a sporty coupe.
Oh, wow.
They even had a racing version.
That's cool.
This little car was a game changer for BMW.
It must have been a huge relief for them to finally have a product that was doing well.
It was. The 700 was a hit.
Yeah.
Big sales numbers helped stabilize the company financially.
Yeah.
But it was more than that.
Yeah.
It proved that BMW could still innovate.
Yeah.
That they could still build cars that people really wanted.
It was a much-needed win.
It was.
Kind of restored their confidence and gave them the resources to move forward.
Exactly.
Which brings us to what many consider to be a real turning point, the new class.
Ah, the new class.
This lineup of compact sedans that launched in 1962.
It was revolutionary for BMW.
Yeah, I've heard about the new class, but
Yeah.
what was it about them that made them so special?
Well, they were sporty, they were sleek, and they were packed with innovative features for the time.
Like what?
Well, things like front disc brakes,
Oh, wow.
four-wheel independent suspension.
Mm-hmm.
That was cutting edge back then.
Yeah, I can see why people would get excited about that.
Absolutely.
It sounds like this is really where their reputation for building what they call, driver's cars really took off.
Exactly. The new class was a hit with both critics and buyers.
Yeah.
It put BMW back on the map as a real contender in the automotive world.
It's amazing how, one model line
It is.
can have such a profound impact on a company.
Yeah, the ripple effect is incredible.
It is.
And the new class, it was just the beginning.
Yeah.
Throughout the 60s, it spawned a bunch of successful models,
Oh, cool.
coupes, and of course the iconic 2002.
The 2002. Now, that's a car I know our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners would
Oh,
love
yeah.
to hear more
A
about.
true legend.
Yeah.
But as BMW's success was growing, so was their need to expand production.
Yep.
Their main plant in Munich was getting pretty crowded.
So did they build a new factory?
They thought about it,
Okay.
but they ended up going a different route.
Okay.
They acquired the Hans Glass Company.
Hans Glass. I vaguely remember that name.
Yeah, they were a smaller car manufacturer.
Okay.
But the real prize for BMW was Glass's factory in Dingolfing.
Okay. So this gave them more production capacity.
Exactly. A ready-made facility allowed them to increase output and meet that growing demand.
Yeah. Smart move.
And speaking of demand, their motorcycle business was booming too.
So what they do about the space issue in Munich?
They made a big decision in 1969.
Okay.
They moved all of their motorcycle production
Wow.
to a brand new facility in Berlin-Spandau.
And that's still where all BMW motorcycles are made today, right?
That's right. Just incredible.
So now they had these two main production hubs.
Yep, Munich and Berlin, humming along.
And this brings us to the early 70s, a period of major expansion for BMW.
It was. They launched a whole wave of new models that would define their lineup for years to come. 1972, the first BMW 5 Series arrived.
The 5 Series, a classic.
Oh, yeah, a midsize sedan that quickly became a favorite.
Yeah, hard to imagine BMW without the 5 Series today.
And then in 75, they introduced the first BMW 3 Series.
The 3 Series, the one that everyone says really solidified that image.
Yep, the ultimate driving machine.
Yeah.
The compact sports sedan, and it would go on to become their best-selling model.
Wow.
And they didn't stop there.
Hey.
1976, they revived the 6 Series,
Okay.
a sleek and luxurious coupe.
Okay.
And then 1978, the first generation of the BMW 7 Series debuted.
Wow. So within just a few years, they had established the core model range
Yeah, the foundation.
that we still see today.
Exactly.
They were really firing on all cylinders.
They were. It was a remarkable period of growth and innovation.
Yeah.
BMW was becoming a true force in the automotive world.
And they had all these amazing cars, but something was still missing.
Right, that high-performance edge.
Yeah, the M.
The M for motorsport.
That would become legendary.
Absolutely.
I'm eager to hear how that all started.
Well, it began around this time with a dedicated team and a passion for pushing the limits of performance. BMW had this rich motorsport heritage,
Yeah.
but they wanted to bring that performance to the streets.
Okay.
So in 1972, they created BMW Motorsport GmbH,
Okay.
a subsidiary focused entirely on racing and high-performance engineering.
Oh.
Their first creation, the BMW M1,
The M1.
a mid-engined supercar,
Wow.
debuted in 1978.
It's such a cool-looking car.
It really is.
It's iconic.
A real statement piece, you know,
Yeah.
showcasing their engineering prowess,
Yeah.
their commitment to building world-class performance cars.
But they didn't just want to build these exotic supercars, right?
No, they had a vision of making M accessible to a wider audience.
Okay.
And that's where the M535i comes in.
Okay.
This was a high-performance version of the 5 Series sedan,
Yeah.
and it debuted in 1980.
So this was kind of the start of the M cars as we know them today,
Exactly.
taking a standard BMW and injecting it
Giving it that M magic.
with that motorsport DNA.
That's it.
It was a formula that really worked.
Oh, yeah, it resonated with enthusiasts.
Yeah.
The M535i paved the way for the iconic E28 M5.
Oh, the E28 M5.
In 1985,
Yeah.
a lot of people consider that the origin of the modern sports sedan.
Yeah, it's a true classic.
It is.
It's amazing how they took this, practical sedan
Right.
and turned it into this performance icon.
They did.
And then, of course, the first M3 arrived in 1986.
Based on the E33 series,
Yeah.
an absolute legend.
Oh, yeah?
Dominated racetracks and the hearts of enthusiasts
Yeah.
all over the world.
These early M cars, they really set the standard
They did.
for this whole lineage of high-performance BMWs that continues to this day.
It's amazing how their influence is still felt today.
Yeah.
But, BMW wasn't just focused on performance.
Right.
They were making advancements in other areas, too.
Like what?
Well, for example, they introduced their first diesel engine in 1983,
Oh, okay.
the M21.
And then in 85, they debuted their first all-wheel drive system
Oh, wow.
in the 325iX,
Interesting.
showing their commitment to pushing those technological boundaries.
Yeah, it's like they were always looking for ways to improve and innovate.
Absolutely.
And they weren't afraid to take risks with their designs.
Oh, not really.
Like the 8 Series.
The 8 Series.
The
Plus.
Grand Touring Coupe that debuted in 1989.
Yeah, a radical departure from their existing lineup.
Yeah, it was a real head-turner.
It was a true modern classic.
And then they had that Z1.
Oh, yeah, 1989.
One with the doors.
The doors that disappeared into the bodywork.
I remember seeing pictures of that as a kid.
Talk about pushing the boundaries of automotive design.
It was so different from anything else on the road.
It really was.
It's interesting how they managed to balance these really bold designs with their more traditional models.
They were masters of diversification.
They were.
Expanding the model range.
Yeah.
Appealing to a wider audience.
Yep. Okay. They introduced their first 5 Series wagon in 1988.
Oh, with the E34 generation.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Showing that performance and practicality didn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, you could have both.
Exactly.
And then in 93, they introduced the 3 Series Compact.
Their first hatchback model.
Really?
Yeah, opening up the brand to a whole new segment of buyers.
It was all about strategic growth.
It was.
While staying true to their core values.
Absolutely.
And they were expanding their global reach as well.
They were. In 1992, they announced plans to build their first assembly plant outside of Germany.
Oh, wow. Where?
In South Carolina.
That's a big step.
It was a huge step, a sign of their commitment to becoming a true global player in the automotive industry.
It marked a whole new era for BMW.
It did.
But like any company, they've faced their fair share of challenges.
Oh, of course.
Their acquisition of the Rover Group in 1994.
The Rover Group.
It was a bit of a mixed bag.
It was a complex chapter.
They hoped to gain expertise in small cars.
Right.
But the integration proved to be more difficult.
It was a lot more difficult than they anticipated.
Yeah.
It was a learning experience, for sure.
Definitely.
But even with those challenges, they accomplished some big things.
Like what?
Well, in 1998, they acquired the rights to Rolls-Royce.
Rolls-Royce, wow.
That really elevated their presence.
It did.
In the ultra-luxury segment.
That must have been a big moment for them.
It was. It solidified their position as a major force in the luxury car world.
And they didn't waste any time in making their mark on the brand.
No, they didn't.
Because in 2003, they launched the first Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Under BMW ownership.
Under BMW ownership.
Yeah.
Wow. That car is like
a true icon.
The definition of luxury.
It is.
So as we move into the 21st century, BMW had this incredibly diverse and successful lineup, right?
They did.
They had everything from those compact hatchbacks to those super luxury sedans. What were some of the key trends that shaped their journey in the new millennium?
Well, I think one of the biggest was the rise of the SUV.
An SUV, yeah.
In 1999, they introduced the X5.
The X5.
Their first foray into the world of sport utility vehicles.
Some people saw that as a real departure for them.
It was a bold move.
It was.
But it paid off.
It did. The X5 was a huge success.
It was.
And it paved the way for that whole family of X models that they have today.
From the X1 to the X6, yeah.
It's hard to imagine BMW without their X models now.
It is.
Another major trend was the shift towards smaller, more fuel-efficient engines.
Right. And BMW embraced turbocharging as a way to boost power while also improving fuel economy.
Smart.
It led to some really remarkable engines. The twin-turbo N54 straight-six debuted in the 2006 335i.
Yeah.
Won a ton of awards. Still considered one of their best engines.
Yeah, they've always had a reputation for building great engines. But they didn't stop there, right? They started exploring hybrid and electric technology as well.
Well, in 2010, they introduced their first hybrid. The Active Hybrid 7.
So a version of their 7 Series.
Yep. And then in 2013, they launched the i3.
It's
their first fully electric car.
I remember when that came out.
It was a groundbreaking car.
It was.
Futuristic design, innovative use of carbon fiber.
Yeah, it was a clear signal that they were serious about this whole, future of mobility.
They were, and then they followed that up with the i8 in 2014.
Oh, the i8, that plug-in hybrid sports car.
Stunning looks, performance, and efficiency.
Yeah.
It was a real statement.
It was.
About their commitment to the future.
Yeah, from making aircraft engines
humble beginning
to this global powerhouse.
They've come a long way.
BMW's journey has been pretty incredible.
It really has.
Full of innovation, performance, and this constant drive to push boundaries.
Pushing the limits.
It's amazing how much they've adapted and evolved
It is.
over the decades, embracing new technologies,
Right.
but still staying true to those core values
So their roots.
of engineering excellence,
Yep.
driving pleasure.
Absolutely.
It really makes you wonder what the next chapter holds for them.
It does. What's next for BMW?
Will they become, a leader in the EV world?
Who knows?
What other new designs and innovations will they surprise us with?
It's exciting to think about.
It is.
The future is full of possibilities for them.
It is, and one thing's for sure.
What's that?
Their story's far from over.
It's just getting started.
That's our deep dive into the history of BMW for all you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in to Vintage Car Chronicles every day for more automotive adventures, available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.